Alright, Founding of the Republic, Part 2, Government of the Republic. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment below. Now, we have in essence, established the new Republican government in Rome. And now we're talking about how what offices were the first ones created in order to actually govern this new state. We've already mentioned the idea of Brutus being a consul. So what exactly is a consul? And what they are is one of a pair of leaders who are at the highest position within the Roman state. Brutus had become consul in 509 with first Lucius Tarquinius Collatinus, but then eventually, after his expulsion, that of Publicola. So in the beginning, one of our major sources for much of what we've talked about so far, that of Livy from the founding of the city, Ab Urbe Condita, or Roman history, as it is probably more commonly known in English. He actually says initially this role was called the praetores, which is something along the line of mayor, or just kind of leader in general. And so this is a role that is developed from the very earliest point and becomes the primary military political role within the Roman Republic. And the thing about these offices, though, as we'll see, they're only for 1 year. They're 1-year terms. And it's because there's two individuals, the most common way of doing it was either that the power was transferred between each consul from month to month, to be who was in charge, or 6 months to 6 months, depending on if there were major conflicts or the like going on. So you didn't have a constant change of leadership and kind of managerial kind of style going back and forth. What makes this office the most important is that it holds imperium. And imperium is basically the military power to lead the military or civilians alike. And so that's the kind of the power that allows them to actually do things. And as with any kind of idea of power, there's usually symbols that represent that. And for Rome, the common symbol for especially the power of imperium is that of the fasces, which we have a diagram here on the left, as well as a original fasce from roughly the time period. If you know anything about any kind of government organizations, or if you've ever been to Washington, D.C., you've probably seen some fasces before. They are used as these kind of depiction of power, as well as physical fasces in lots of cases are used for opening ceremonies to open up governments, or at commencements at universities and things along those lines. Now, the fasces that we see here is basically represented as an axe surrounded by a bundle of sticks. And it comes along in the sort of metaphor of one stick can be broken, but many sticks cannot. And therefore, there's this kind of essence of power in numbers kind of idea. From our piece of artifact here, we have one that was found in the tomb of a lictor. A lictor is basically the people who carry these around. That was found in Vitellonia. And they date to 610 BCE. So you might be wondering, wait, 610? That's before the consuls. Then how does this relate to the consuls? This is a symbol of power that actually had pre-existed the formation of the Republic. The kings of Rome had their bodyguards, these lictors, carrying these around in a kind of procession whenever they would move about the city. And so when the consuls took these kind of symbols, they divided them amongst themselves. So one consul got a certain number of lictors, and the other one got the other. That was half of what a king would get. So that's the way that they kind of held on this power. So this is an example of a pre-existing symbol that is now being later adopted by the consuls themselves. Now, how is this being kind of used and shown. We have a coin here from much later, from 54 BCE, but it is a coin made by a descendant of the great Brutus, um, probably a Brutus that's even more famous, that of Marcus Junius Brutus. And if you've heard the name Brutus before and you've been wondering about it, yes, this is the Brutus that kills Julius Caesar. He does adopt his stepfather's name at a point or two, so he does go under the name of Quintus Servilius Capo Brutus. So partly used that during that time, but he's using this coin as a way to hark back to his great ancestor, that of Lucius Junius Brutus. And so what we see here is Brutus in the front with his lictors following along him, carrying those fasces, those symbols of power. So you can see the way in which the lictors would be moving about the city. And so this is an aspect of familiar propaganda. Romans will do this a lot. Whenever they get into positions of power that allow them to mint coins, which there's a particular office that makes you the moneyer, and you get to basically choose the designs, and a lot of people end up doing things that aggrandize famous family members, and Brutus is doing the same thing here. But because of the sense of his own time, that he is also pushing the idea of liberty, hence Libertas, the Lady Liberty here on the opposite end. And so this is an aspect of family propaganda, but also can show us aspects of how the idea of lictors and things work. So this was minted in Rome in 54. So when it comes to dating these types of things, know that you need to be as specific as possible to which Brutus we're talking about and what time period it is coming from. Now, we talked about the Curia Hostilis before. The Curia is still being used and is the main focal point of the Senate. Now we're actually saying it's like who exactly these people are. So it is said that Romulus, upon becoming king, basically chooses his set of advisors, and this becomes the Senate, which is about 300 people. It varies widely throughout the ages. Sometimes it get up to almost 1,000 or more. Sometimes it's as low as 100, 150. It all depends on how many people are dying and how quickly, or who is in charge and how they want to kind of use the Senate to the best of their ability. The main job of the Senate is actually to control the treasury. They are the ones that control the purse strings. They basically dictate how money is spent in Rome, as well as take on dignitaries and embassies from other states. So they have a diplomatic role as well. So that is, but they aren't the same sort of Senate as like the U.S. Senate. So don't get them confused in that way. The U.S. Senate actually creates laws that are then worked with the House to actually be passed into laws. The Senate does not have that power. They will craft laws and bring them before the people, but it's the people who ratify the actual letters, the actual law itself. The Senate is imposing law upon the people. The Senate will craft law and bring it to the people, and the people will choose whether or not the law will actually be passed to be ratified or not. Now, what we are looking at here is the Curia Julia, which is the third of the Roman Curia, because Rome has a tendency to burn, and so many of these end up burning down. But this one is actually started by Julius Caesar and then finished by the Emperor Augustus in 29 BCE. And so this is the one that, if you go to the Roman Forum today, you will see still standing there. Now, to give you an idea of what it would have looked like at the time, it's the advancing portico on the front has been lost through the ages, but still still together today. Now, how do we know about a lot of the things that we've been talking about? We have our literary sources from much later, which at times, as we'll see, can be very iffy on their accuracy. as we'll especially before a certain date, which we will get to a little bit later. But we have other physical epigraphic evidence to corroborate the stories that are being told us in our literary sources from much later. And this is one of those examples. This is called the Fasti Capitolani. Capitolani from the Capitoline Hill, where it is, and a Fasti, which basically means a list. So it's the capital list. And so what is it a list of? But consuls. So on the Capitoline Hill, they posted every year who was elected to all the different offices throughout Rome. This particular one is the list of all the consuls. This particular section that we're looking at here is the period of time from 264 to 172 BCE, beginning with the consul Appius Claudius Claudex and his co-consul Marcus Flavius Flaccus, going all the way up to that of Gaius Populinus Linus and his co-consul Publius Aelius Legus. So this goes from basically the First Punic War, which we'll be getting to in a little bit, and going up through to our first plebeian consuls, and we'll talk about who the plebeians are in a sec. So with that, that is the end of our second video. If you need to go back and look at the first one, here's that. If you're ready to go on to the third, it is here. Again, if you had any questions during the whole of this video, please leave them in a comment below.